Now, the president's visit to China comes as U.S. and China are in a fight for AI supremacy. Access to powerful computer chips are now part of the negotiations between these two countries. Now, to emphasize the importance of the tech in the U.S. and China-U.S. relationship, China's premier met with tech business leaders, including Apple's Tim Cook, Tesla's Elon Musk, and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang. China's premier talked about a peaceful coexistence between the two countries. But I want to bring in Matt Sheehan. He's a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and he focuses on Chinese AI development and governance. Matt, great to be with you. The U.S. and China are in an all-out AI race. Do you think this visit changes that race in any way?
It doesn't change the fundamentals of the competition that both countries are going to be pushing forward their AI capabilities and the diffusion of the technology as fast as they can. But what it might do is introduce a new element of, if not cooperation, maybe coordination when it comes to reducing the risks from the technology. That's something that's been very hard to come by, but I think as both leaders see new developments like the Mythos model and the impact they can have, there is an incentive to start talking about ways to coordinate safety approaches.
Now, concerns over AI risks and cyber attacks are growing all around the world. AI now capable of finding software vulnerabilities, and hackers can, of course, exploit that. Do you see China and the U.S. collaborating to manage AI risks? Is China concerned about that at all?
China has a lot of concerns about AI risks, and those concerns are often very different than us. Their primary concern with generative AI is the content that it produces. Does it harm their sort of controls on information and content in China? That's sort of the first instinct of the Chinese Communist Party. But there are areas where we do have aligned interests, and usually that comes to when non-state actors, either criminals or terrorists, if they get their hands on the technology and use it against one or both of the countries, that's something that neither country wants. I assume the U.S. is going to be using AI as part of its cyber capabilities in relation to China. China's going to be using AI to boost its own cyber capabilities. But I think what neither country wants is for those same capabilities to fall into the hands of non-state actors. And there are some areas like that where we have narrowly scoped opportunities for coordination.
It's interesting because here in the U.S., we've seen protests against these AI data centers, layoffs attributed to AI, and then there's been lawsuits against AI companies. But in China, we've seen people lining up to install AI software on their computers. Can you explain how people in China use and view AI compared to Americans? And a separate part of this question, is that going to impact the race?
Absolutely. I think there's a kind of a fundamental difference in the posture, in the attitude that people have towards the technology in the two countries. But there's also, I think, increasing alignment between the two populations. So I think the different posture is that Chinese people, Chinese citizens tend to be more optimistic about technology, information technology than Americans. I think this makes sense. In the time that information technology and the internet have risen to prominence in our lives, Chinese people have gotten a lot richer during that period. And Americans, a lot of them feel that their wages have stagnated, their lives haven't gotten better. So I think that sets up a kind of a fundamentally different attitude to begin with. But that also masks a lot of anxieties within China around AI. I think you mentioned people lining up to install these new AI agents on their computers and their phones. And on the one hand, that looks like great enthusiasm for the technology. But if you speak to people, it actually is growing out of a lot of anxiety that people have about the technology, and especially its impact on jobs. The Chinese economy hasn't been doing great, and a lot of Chinese people have felt that their wages aren't rising. Things have been quite stagnant for wage earners in China since COVID. And there's this sense that if you don't latch on to the latest AI development, you're going to be left behind. That's a phrase that's gained a lot of traction in China, getting left behind by AI. I think that anxiety is shared between the two countries. It might manifest differently in Chinese people embracing the technology and in Americans fearing it more, but it's driven by a similar anxiety about the way this technology is going to impact our lives.
Matt Sheehan, thank you so much. Great to be with you.
Thank you.